So William is asking, what is meant of the 2300 morning and nights in David 8?
All right, William. I was so excited to see this question come in. So, like Tina and I, probably between the two of us, we have seen, maybe, probably I'm sure between the two of us, 100 different sermons on the 2300 days. And I have only heard one that really goes into what the morning and evenings are. And Tina, I'm just curious, have you ever studied it or gotten a good answer what the morning and evenings or morning and nights are?
Are you talking about Daniel chapter 8:14, right?
Yes, Daniel
Okay.
8:14. And maybe
Hmm.
we should put
Yeah,
up the
because I was
verse.
because I know he put David 8, so I think there was just a little mix up there with the name.
Oh, that's right.
As far as the morning and nights, I've never heard that. I just understand it to be, another 2,300 days shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Like I'm just quoting the Bible verse, and
Yep.
that's the only version I know. And so obviously, I take that to be prophetic days, which is a day for a year of prophecy. So this is 2,300 days prophetically, 2,300 years literally, as far as this prophecy.
So this prophecy is actually a unique one. And this one, like within even our faith group, I think a lot of us miss this, and that's why I was so amazed by this one presentation I heard. So this could blow everybody's minds, perhaps. So let's put it up. Let's look at the New King James. So as Tina said, um, Daniel 8 verse 14, it says, "And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed." So days and cleansed. Let's keep those both in mind. Now, if we're able to put up the NIV, I think that would be good. NIV has a little bit different. It says, he said to me, yeah, 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be reconsecrated. So now we have evenings and mornings and then reconsecrated. I think the NIV here did a better job. It actually it followed more closely the Hebrew when it's translated evenings and mornings. It's not yom, which normally we see for a day. It was a different word. The words like we see in Genesis when it says, evening and the morning were the first day. That's the wording it's using here in the Hebrew. But then NIV uses the word reconsecrated. I don't think that was as good. King James Version, I'm going to say, does a better job when it says cleansed. And that word cleanse there is more consistent with the Greek translation of the Old Testament that Jesus had in his day. And so the 70 Jewish scholars back then decided that should be cleansed, or the Greek word equivalent for cleanse, carthazo, like where we get catharsis from. So, and we're going to come back to that. That's why I'm talking about cleanse, because what is the significance of the evenings and mornings is going to tie into this cleanse. So, as Tina mentioned, there's this concept for a day for a year principle for a lot of prophecies where God will use the term days, but really, if you treat those days as years, things work out just right. Like these, including this 2,300. It's a very important concept, a day for a year. I'm not going to go into more detail on that, but this one, there's another way that we could get to why it's a day for a year. And it goes back to, we're not specifically given days in this prophecy. It says evenings and mornings. So it's talking about a particular day and 2,300 of these particular days. What day would that be? What day would there be a particular day, and it's telling us 2,300 will pass, and then the sanctuary will be cleansed. So to understand this, we have to step back and look at this whole prophecy and look at it as a whole. So it begins in Daniel 8, verse 1, says, third year of the king Nebuchadnezzar, I had a vision after the one that had already appeared to me. So we already had the vision that we see in Daniel 6 and 7. Now, or Daniel 7, now we're looking at this one in Daniel 8. And he sees similar imagery, but now instead of these different beasts, he's seeing a different set of beasts. In Daniel 3, he sees a ram which had 2 horns. So a ram with 2 horns. And then in Daniel 5, he sees now a male goat. So we've gone from seeing bears and lions and all these things to now here's a ram with horns, and here's a goat that also has a horn. And then that horn breaks, and then we get smaller horns. Rams, goats. Where do we see this imagery a lot in the Old Testament? Daniel 8-9, we see there's this little horn. Daniel 8, verse 9 says, and out of one of these came a little horn. There was these horns that broke off from the ram. And that little horn grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, toward the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily, by the way, that word sacrifice was added in. It really literally just says the daily were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. His being capitalized, so God's sanctuary being cast down. Because of the transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this and prospered. So we're now seeing horn, daily, the daily, and sanctuary. Horn, daily, sanctuary, goat, ram. What do these all have in common? It is the old sanctuary. It's pointing to the sanctuary practices of the Old Testament. The daily is being taken away, but there's something else though that they have in common. And the big one is that really the biggest clue that what these are all pointing to, Daniel 8, verse 13. We don't have to guess. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? So basically, how long is this vision going to, all these events we saw taking place and all this, how long is that going to be? He said to me, for 2,300 days, or the evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. When does the sanctuary get cleansed in the Old Testament? And this is why I said it was important to understand, is it cleansed versus is it reconsecrated that we're talking about? If you look at it as cleansed, now we understand that this is talking about a very special day that happened once a year for the Jews, and that was the Day of Atonement. And the Day of Atonement is very interesting. It is the only one of the Jewish festivals for which we have the term evening to evening being mentioned. So let's look at Leviticus 23, 27 to 28. Leviticus 23, starting at verse 27. And it reads, also the 10th day of this Sabbath month shall be the Day of Atonement. It shall be a holy consecration for you. You shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire to the Lord, and you shall do no work on that same day, for it is the Day of Atonement to make atonement for you before the Lord your God. It shall be to you a Sabbath of solemn rest, and you shall afflict your souls on the 9th day of the month at evening. From evening to evening you shall celebrate your Sabbath. So evening to evening, sort of, there's this 24-hour period, God saying that was the Day of Atonement. And now this prophecy is also saying, hey, there's this 24-hour period, and there's going to be 2,300 of these. 2,300 days of atonements will pass by, and then the sanctuary will be cleansed. Which sanctuary would that one be? Sanctuary in heaven. And in a sense, God's church on earth at the same time. It's a study for itself too. But that is the significance of it, the evenings and mornings. And the math works out amazingly on this. If, as Tina mentioned, there's that 7-week prophecy, 7-year prophecy. 490 day prophecy. Where if you go down to Daniel chapter 8, the angel Gabriel reappears and starts explaining the rest of this prophecy and explains that there's this chunk of 490 years that are going to be given over to the Jews. And the last week of those 490 is when the Messiah was going to show up. And the Messiah showing up begins with the baptism of Christ. And if you crunch all the numbers and all that, you find Christ was baptized then on a day of it, or around the Day of Atonement. He was 30 years old then. He probably had just turned 30. So Jesus was actually born close to Day of Atonement, not Christmas time, around Day of Atonement. And then if you go 6 months forward from Day of Atonement, or if you do the math, whatever the distance between, I think half a year from Day of Atonement to when Passover is 6 months. So you go 3.5 years forward, you get to Christ's crucifixion, which is what Daniel 8 says also. It says, in the middle of the week, Messiah will be cut off. So I hope this gives you more sense of what this is talking about. It is talking about 2,300 days of atonement, this evening to morning period or even an evening period that represents that very special time of Day of Atonement, leading to the ultimate Day of Atonement or period of Day of Atonement, which we are actually in now. But that's also a study for itself. Tina, what do you think of that?
Yeah, spot on. Good stuff. I love the book of Daniel, and I love this prophecy. This is honestly probably my favorite prophecy in the entire Bible is the 2,300-day prophecy, because it brings into view the sanctuary. It brings into view, God's end day people. It brings into view the second coming, and gets you to realize where we are at in Earth's history, and just to realize, that that we're living in that last day of atonement, and that Jesus is coming very soon. And I love this too, because it also ties into who Jesus is, his role as high priest in heaven. And you see this, in the book of Hebrews chapter 8, verses 1 and 2, or it talks about Jesus being the high priest, in the heavenly sanctuary that the Lord pitched and not man, and that he sat at the right hand, and it's his blood that atones us. And the whole gospel story starts making sense as far as why Jesus came and died on the cross, because he was the lamb to cleanse us. And that's why we have a sanctuary, so that we could go to be cleansed by the lamb. And there's too much. There's so much to this. It's hard to get into everything, but I absolutely love this study. And my friend, I hope that you continue to study God's word and dig deep, because there's a lot more there. It's so beautiful when you just start to understand and tie the pieces together in the Bible. But yeah, absolutely. We are definitely in that last day of atonement, and I just can't wait for Jesus to come.
Amen.